I don't like the kind of things such as some pop stars do, associating themselves with religion, preaching some kind of religion.
When Mick Jagger, the iconic frontman of the Rolling Stones, appeared in a candid conversation during an exclusive, albeit loosely structured radio segment, no one quite expected what would follow. Known for his charisma, his unmistakable stage presence, and his decades-long influence on rock music, Jagger has always walked a fine line between rock legend and cultural commentator. But in an unusually raw moment, he offered something the public rarely sees: an unfiltered opinion. Without a script, without pretense, and without concern for decorum, he named 5 musicians he outright couldn't stand. It was a moment that exploded across social and traditional media. Not because a celebrity had an opinion, but because this celebrity finally shed his rock star diplomacy in favor of a brutal honesty that bordered on incendiary. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Jagger's grievances weren't couched in careful language or softened with caveats. He didn't claim to respect their success but dislike their music, nor did he imply personal differences without naming names. He went straight into it with something that felt less like a press soundbite and more like a man in a bar venting with his drink in hand. What stunned most listeners wasn't the mere mention of names, it was the weight of the names themselves. He didn't pick obscure or marginal figures. Instead, he chose some of the most visible and lauded figures in the modern music industry. The magnitude of his comments created immediate waves, not because the comments were petty, but because they came from someone so integral to the very architecture of popular music. For years, Jagger has played the role of elder statesman in the rock world. Though known for his defiant youth and hedonistic persona in the 60s and 70s, he had more recently evolved into a sage-like figure, rarely offering anything too controversial about other artists. That's what made this so astonishing. Mick Jagger deciding, perhaps on a whim or perhaps after long reflection, to call out 5 musicians he could no longer stomach. This shift felt seismic, and it was hard not to feel like the moment marked a breaking point of sorts, either in his personal tolerance or in his public image. After all, for someone who spent over 6 decades in the limelight, choosing to express disdain for his peers or successors isn't just a passing remark, it becomes a timestamp in music history. The backlash started before the interview even concluded. As the names began to circulate, some whispered in disbelief, others shouted with gleeful incredulity. Audiences and critics alike began to dissect the possible reasons behind the statements. Was it generational frustration, a distaste for modern production aesthetics? Or was it more personal, rooted in interactions or industry politics the public would never fully understand? Jagger gave no context. He offered no timeline or narrative, just names. In doing so, he left a massive void where interpretation was destined to fester, and fester it did. The media took hold of the event with the kind of fervor reserved for celebrity meltdowns and royal controversies. Tabloids crafted speculative stories, alleging past feuds, creative plagiarism, or disrespectful comments that may have pushed Jagger to speak out. Music journalists, on the other hand, began analyzing every collaboration, award show interaction, and lyrical allusion between Jagger and the named artist, trying to identify the fault lines. But in truth, the public didn't need details to be enthralled. The sheer image of one of rock's most iconic voices publicly rejecting 5 of his peers created an irresistible narrative vortex. And in the age of endless digital discourse, that's all that's needed. There's something undeniably fascinating about watching a figure like Jagger drop the veil. For decades, he's operated at a level where diplomacy is expected, even if disingenuous. This act of raw honesty, even if harsh, came across as a kind of rebellion not against individuals, but against the culture of politeness that has permeated high-profile music circles. One might imagine Jagger, growing increasingly irritated over the years, watching artists he disliked ascend charts and claim awards with music that perhaps felt hollow or derivative to him. It would be naive to think even the most revered legends are immune to jealousy, artistic frustration, or generational friction. But it would also be simplistic to write this off as a cranky old rock star lashing out at a changing world. This was something else. In naming those 5 artists, Jagger wasn't just expressing disdain. He was marking a kind of boundary, drawing a thick black line between what he considers real, enduring artistry and what he sees as performative spectacle or trend chasing. And perhaps this is the most provocative implication of all, the idea that one of the greatest musicians of the 20th century feels that the music world has betrayed its soul. Whether that's true or not is beside the point. The fact that he felt compelled to say it, without apology or nuance, meant that he believed his silence had become a kind of complicity. This breach of silence also challenges a wider assumption about celebrity, that with success comes an obligation to play nice. The entertainment industry is filled with unspoken rules. Chief among them is the idea that public negativity toward peers is unseemly. Jagger, whether intentionally or not, bulldozed that concept in a matter of seconds. And once a figure of his stature breaks that rule, it opens the door for others to do the same. His words functioned not just as statements, but as a kind of permission slip for honesty. A lot of people in the industry likely felt the tremor, even if they didn't say so aloud. Fans were understandably divided. For some, Jagger's statements felt like a betrayal, a disappointing turn from a figure who many believed had transcended petty judgments. For others, it was a breath of fresh air in a landscape saturated with feigned admiration and contrived collaborations. The division highlighted the growing rift between generations of music listeners. Younger audiences who grew up idolizing some of the very artists Jagger condemned saw the comments as arrogant, outdated, and mean-spirited. Older fans, conversely, viewed it as a long overdue critique from someone who had earned the right to be brutally honest. There's also the matter of cultural tone. The current climate in entertainment leans heavily towards diplomacy and inclusivity, often rewarding those who can maintain broad appeal and avoid conflict. In that sense, Jagger's comments felt almost anachronistic, like a relic from an era when musical rivalries and brutally honest interviews were part of the norm. Think Lennon versus McCartney post-Beatles, or Oasis picking fights with just about everyone. The difference is that those were artists at their peak, still embroiled in the hustle of career competition. Jagger, well past his commercial zenith and with nothing left to prove, delivered his critique from the summit. That changes the dynamic completely. It also raises the question of whether Jagger's distaste is rooted more in artistic sensibility or personal ethics. Without explanation, it's impossible to know. Yet some industry insiders have hinted that his choices were far from arbitrary, that his comments weren't made from spite but from a deep sense of artistic betrayal. Perhaps he saw in these musicians not just weak songwriting or overproduced tracks, but a kind of opportunism that runs counter to everything he believes music should be. The Rolling Stones built their legend on rebellion, but also on authenticity. For Jagger to declare antipathy so publicly suggests that, to him, these figures have violated some unspoken code. Of course, such an act doesn't occur in a vacuum. Jagger's moment of honesty also had immediate implications for the public discourse around celebrity criticism. Traditionally, when artists express dislike for one another, it's either cloaked in metaphor or quickly walked back. This moment ran counter to that norm. No apologies, no spin, no publicist rushing to release a clarification. It was both jarring and oddly exhilarating. There's something undeniably riveting about a public figure refusing to self-censor, even if it invites backlash. And then, there's the question of legacy. Mick Jagger doesn't need to protect his, but in leveling these accusations, however undefined, he risked complicating it. Future retrospectives won't just include the tours, the albums, the cultural revolutions. They'll also mention this rare instance where Jagger lashed out, naming names in a manner more akin to a diss track than an elder artist's reflection. That's not necessarily a negative. Legacies are built not just on what's created, but on the stands taken. Still, it marked a shift from myth to man, exposing a raw nerve that most assumed had long been dulled by success and time. Within the industry, responses have likely been more complex than anything seen in public. Producers, managers, and fellow musicians must now navigate the ripple effects, both professional and personal, of Jagger's statements. Being named, after all, isn't just a blow to pride. It has real consequences. Relationships might shift, invitations might dry up, or conversely, it could elevate the artists in question, casting them as rebels in their own right, challenged by a titan of the old guard. Either outcome has the potential to reshape careers. The event also highlights a recurring paradox in music, that the people who once broke all the rules are expected in their twilight years to uphold them. Jagger never played by the book, so why should anyone expect him to start now? Yet the modern music world operates on such a tightrope of image management that this kind of raw commentary seems almost alien. That alone underscores how much the industry has changed since Jagger first burst onto the scene with untamed energy and a defiant sneer. This episode will undoubtedly be studied, not for what was said, but for the implications it stirred. For once, a public figure offered no tidy ending, no carefully polished soundbite, just unvarnished contempt from a place of earned authority. And perhaps that's why it will endure. because it reminded the world that even legends have limits, and that sometimes honesty isn't just refreshing, it's revolutionary. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Mick Jagger's picks? Who do you think he named? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.